And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Hi, Steve. Thanks for coming back on the show. I thought it'd be great to get you back on and talk about what's been happening with the recent hearings in Congress. We've had another round of them. You were there. What's been happening, mate?
We continue to make substantial progress, in spite of the fact that there's a lot of distraction, a lot of things happening out there in the world that are taking the attention of the media and also taking up the attention of our Congress. It's a dangerous world out there, and that's something that's, I think, very relevant to the issue that we're dealing with, which is ultimately ending this lie, this embargo that governments are leading, particularly the United States, and maintaining, rather, particularly the United States, that's not happening. So in just the span of 7 years, just to give you an update, just 7 years, going back to October, nearly 7,000 articles that I have archived, which is not all, but it's 7,000 of the more appropriate mainstream articles that are not silly, have been archived in my website at paradigmresearchgroup.org. Thousands more foreign language articles have been written, as well as what we'll say less mainstream media.
Yeah,
it's a huge volume of coverage. During that 7 years, the stigma on the issue is essentially collapsed, even to the point where UFO, which was like the hook that was used to attach that stigma. In other words, until you said UFO, you're fine. And the moment you say that, well, you're nuts. That's back. The term is now in use, though still not in the legislation. There have been 4 consecutive bills passed by our Congress. 220, 221, 222, 223. Each one more robust than the other. The 4th one was, as initially submitted, the ultimate bill that would have accounted for and established a legal basis for everything the government of the United States has in its possession or knows about ET issue, ET reality, to come forward. That was a bit too much. And so there was some pushback, and that bill was cut in half. The essence of the bill remains with a few things that are actually happening. But almost all the powers of Congress and other aspects of it that would have been troublesome to both the Department of Defense and military contractors was removed. Fine. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some.
Sure.
Then that same act was resubmitted for next year. That would have been the 5th. But that resubmission did not come until relatively late into this political election, which has been all-consuming, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
And ultimately, it was withdrawn, I guess you could say. I think they said that they neglected to get it in time.
Okay.
So it was withdrawn. So as far as I know, there is not an act, a new piece of legislation. This legislation is going to be signed this year. There are a couple of other pieces of legislation that have been submitted in the House, particularly. Some did not get a vote, and some are still pending. One of those, recently submitted by Congressman Burchett, was regarding witness protection.
Yeah.
Other legislation regarding witness and whistleblower protection are being formulated. So that is a significant thing. Not good if it held off. Good if it gets done soon. And the reason for that is that while many witnesses have come forward publicly and privately, witnesses of substance that could easily testify, perhaps some of the strongest witnesses, these that are firsthand to actual USAP programs, unacknowledged special access programs, working directly on the phenomena, the issue, and everything else. They have sort of indicated to whomever that they don't think the protection is good enough yet. I can appreciate that. There are some that think it is. And so I know we have some firsthand witnesses. There's one group in particular I'll talk about that could testify in front of a Senate hearing enough that when that hearing was over, say after about 5 days, the truth embargo would be done. And then it would just be a matter of the president coming forward and confirming what huge numbers of people already know now. Even more would know after a substantive hearing with the witnesses we think that are available. Still, what is sort of happening now is that the fact that there are some top witnesses that they would like to have that are not comfortable yet, the idea that we don't have enough witnesses has become the go-to excuse for delay. It's convenient, it's hard to argue with, and so the feedback I'm getting is that people that are being approached by others, primarily in the Senate, are being told that we not ready yet because we just don't have enough witnesses, which is obviously a very safe way to say it. Yeah, it's a good excuse. I didn't mean no disrespect when I say I don't think it's true. I think they have more than enough witnesses, but they're not ready yet. Well, they'd better get ready because we're starting to run out of time here. So that is all happening. A number of individuals in the last 7 years have come forward publicly, people in politics, people in science, people in defense related areas in both private and public, government and private sectors have come forward and just matter-of-factly stated publicly in front of cameras that we have non-human technological entities here. And the three examples that I think are best known are Congressman Tim Burchett, Dr. Gary Nolan of Stanford, and Colonel Carl Nell, who has worked in many areas of government, both private and military. Very substantial background. And there's some others. Obviously, everyone that comes forward like that makes it a little harder for the Congress to keep dragging their feet on this. And I expect more. But there is still a process underway. I don't want to be too negative here in the sense that there has been substantial pushback. Where we are now is there is no question in my mind that if the Senate wanted to, and by that I mean the Senate Intelligence Committee, though the Senate Armed Services Committee would be a perfectly appropriate candidate, but so much of what's happened has been coming out of the Senate Intel Committee. Senator Gillibrand's she's on both committees, and so she's kind of brought the Armed Services Committee of the Senate into play. But all of the legislation emerged out of the Senate Intelligence Committee, though eventually, when you got to that last bill, the big one, Senator Schumer, Senator Rounds got involved. Schumer is a House Majority Leader. Rounds, of course, was a Senate Armed Services. So either one, there is no barrier that I can tell, other than the will to do so, of either one of these committees bringing in 20 witnesses under oath, filmed by probably 20 different venues, going out worldwide feeds, and ending the truth embargo in December. And it needs to be in December. I think after January 3, there's a number of reasons why that's too late. And I am doing what I can to encourage that and advance it to the point where maybe it'll happen. But it's certainly hard to say. It's hard to know. But we're not done yet. We're not going to give up on that. There is a very good reason, nonpartisan, why getting that hearing into December and ending this truth embargo before the next administration, the next Congress takes over, the next administration takes over, and getting that out of the way so that the United States has confirmed the ET presence, and probably within a week, every major nation in the world has confirmed the ET presence, and the entire world and all 8 billion people are in the post-disclosure era for maybe a whole month prior to the new president taking over. That settles that matter. It's done. And now the new president, who will be the first president really to engage the post-disclosure world, an extraordinary thing, will then be able to go right to work deciding and within the administration how to deal with all of the various issues that the disclosure event brings up. And that is the responsible way to do this. It is nonpartisan. If the Senate does not agree with this my thinking on this, and does not hold that hearing, and we do not get disclosure from what would obviously be President Biden, then this issue will carry over into the next administration. I don't think anything will happen in January.
Inauguration.
We will have a new Congress.
Mm.
The House will remain in Republican hands, but the Senate moves to the Republican side, which means we'll have a Republican chair of the Intel Committee and the Armed Services Committee, which is not necessarily a bad thing. The Republicans have been pretty supportive of this
More
process,
so, I would say,
frankly. Yeah. But still, it's a new Congress. They have to get set. There's a lot to do leading up to, of course, the inauguration.
Is it Marco Rubio earmarked as being on one of the committees?
Marco Rubio is the ranking member of the Senate Intel Committee. He was the chairman when the first piece of legislation was submitted in 2020 that was signed by President Trump. So he has a significant legacy there. Though once the Democrats took over the Senate a few months later, he sort of stepped back, hasn't said much. No problem. But he will not be on the Senate Intel Committee. He has been made Secretary of State.
Yeah.
So his position will be replaced by an appointee by the governor, Florida, DeSantis. But who will be the chairman of the Intel Committee? I do not know. It has not been picked yet. I don't think it really matters, but nevertheless, there's going to be some changes.
Well, I was just thinking, Marco Rubio, he's been vocal with the UFO phenomenon, and him being Secretary of State, which holds significant power, will that have some influence on whether or not that happens under the Trump
administration? He's on the record. I mean, he'll be Secretary of State, fairly important position, and he's on the record on this issue.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is that then we're talking about all of, the end of January, February, into March. I happen to believe, and I've stated publicly now, that the prospects for disclosure under the new president are actually pretty good. Awful lot of the groundwork is done. There'll be more, I think, more developments between now and January 21 that will move us in the right direction. But more importantly, the president-elect has been asked about the issue many times. Probably more than any other presidential candidate or president, frankly. There have been the occasional query that turns up, but in this case, he's been a president for 4 years. He was technically a candidate for another 4. That's 8. Now, when the president-elect responds, it's fairly casual. It's not intense. It's not elaborated on. On occasion, he has made more relatively straightforward statements that he would release files, things like that. And so it's in play, without question. It's also the case that people around the president-elect, a number of people, have brought this up. They've commented on it, which means that people within his circle apparently are supportive. And third, it's also notable that this lie, that has been serviced to, managed by the military intelligence complex and defense contractors and so forth, which for some people are part of the deep state. They like to refer to as the deep state, the secret world. So it's not a term that I think is well defined, but it is in the target field. And so going after the truth embargo would fit into the agenda that the new administration has discussed and approached for some time.
Indeed.
And then finally, the president-elect is probably more than any other president that I'm aware of, is a president who will do what he wants to do. If he wants to do it, he's not going to get talked out of it easily. So it's much more likely that he could take a very independent, this is what I'm going to do, where other presidents would be, asking 10 advisors, what do you think, and whatever. And if he wants to do it, he'll do it. Now, so given all of that, potential for disclosure in the first 60 days of the next administration, I consider high. So Well and good. Now, then the question is, how will it go? How will it be done? And I've been talking about that for a long time. I have a very strong feeling about how it should be done. But we've been heading exactly in that direction for 7 years, which I think is good. But will that be the case in a new administration? The way it should happen is that the word is provided to the now Republican-led Intelligence Committee in the Senate, get those witnesses in, hopefully pay their airfare and hotel, treat them like, the important people they are, get them in, put them in front of you under oath, get a significant number. We're up to 4. We had 4 in the recent one. That's good. We need more. 20 is the number I like to use. That's nothing unusual. We've had major hearings involving major issues with more witnesses than that. So 20 witnesses, do it in a week, get it done so that the world clearly, and this hearing will be broadcast worldwide, probably to one of the largest audiences ever. And then at the end of that hearing, you can step forward and confirm ET presence. That's the way it should be done. There's some other ways it could happen. And one of them would be a unilateral disclosure on the part of the president, meaning the president just simply calls the press into the East Room and steps up to the microphone and says, I've been aware of this issue. I have the goods on this issue, and we're not alone. We have this non-human tech and non-human presence, and I'm going to address it, and you're going to learn more about it, and that's it. Okay?
But I think given Trump's personality, he would love to be the one to tell the world that.
Well, he's going to be the one he's going to be the first disclosure president under the first scenario, except the first scenario is much more appropriate, more engaging, and what brings to Congress, it spreads the legacy, it's more nonpartisan.
Well, the second, sorry, Steve, but the second one, if Trump comes forward and says, right, this is it, we're not alone, I've been aware of this, blah, blah,
right,
blah.
Boom.
Here's some witnesses, now I'm going to hand over to them and you're going to hear all the evidence, right? So he announces it. That's a bombshell. That's a disclosure with a big D, the President of the United States coming out and doing that.
Well, it's always disclosure with a D, but this is a much more, it is much more presidentially focused. It is not prefaced too much, so it's of a different type. Now, look, I'm not going to belabor it.
Sure.
The principle, there's disclosure has to happen, and long term, it does not matter. But the principle thing that concerns me about this unilateral, out of nowhere kind of thing, where there's no preface hearing. There are hearings afterwards, right? But no hearing leading up to it. A completion of this process been underway. Is that the other heads of state might be a little more reluctant to follow suit.
Okay.
It's like one president says they're here. Now, if that announcement from the new president includes the fact that, and now these things are going to take place. There's going to be a hearing. We're going to have this and that and everything else, and winter's coming forward. That's not so bad. But the heads of states will probably defer till that. In other words, they're going to say, I'm not just going to jump in, the next day and say, well, the president of the United States said there's ETs here, and I'm going to tell you, yeah, they are. So it kind of just makes it a little more awkward, but ultimately it is not going to matter. So that's pretty much where we are right now.
Do you think there would be any international? This is just spitballing, really. But do you think there would be any kind of? Because, like, I could see journalists scrambling up to our prime minister and scrambling up to presidents and prime ministers around the world for comment. What's your comment on what President Trump just announced? Okay,
yeah.
You would think then that if that's going to be the case and everybody knows that would be the case, that there would be some kind of international consultation before that took place if it was going to go down that road.
No. You can't have an international consultation with that leaking out all over the place.
I know. So they're just going to, so the leaders of other countries are just going to be in the hands of which way the US decides it's going to go.
Good point. This is a good point. If it's out of nowhere, okay, meaning, hey, just boom, it happens, right? Then the foreign leaders are going to have a bunch of press literally cramming themselves into the briefing room, wanting to have answers, and they may or may not be so prepared. On the other hand, if we have the hearing that we need to have, the kind of hearing you had to have under some of the biggest issues in American history, you had to have hearings to resolve them, then the other heads of state are going to get the picture. They're going to know, whoa, okay. And they're going to watch those hearings. They're going to hear these witnesses. They're going to be, wow, this is it. So they will be much more prepared for
which
the
is why
announcement.
which is why you favor scenario
another
A.
reason.
Yeah,
In other words, the first option is more generous to the Congress. It's generous to the people. It gives them some opportunity to anticipate. The foreign leaders will have some time. So I would consider it the more prudent way to go.
Yeah, I see what you're thinking.
But, if it just happens and then they have to face a bunch of questions the next day overseas, well, all I can say to them is, folks, you went along with the truth embargo. You supported it implicitly or explicitly for some 70 years. So there you go. Deal with it so we can move on.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so the first thing that springs to my mind as you're saying all of this is where we are right now geopolitically. There was a rumor in this country before our last election that the last Prime Minister, the outgoing Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, didn't want to be a wartime Prime Minister, right? And that they thought that he was going to kick off with Ukraine and eventually we'd start authorizing missiles. This was several months ago. And now we're there, okay? We're there. US and British missiles are being fired, long-range missiles into Russia. Putin's been on the news and said, okay, I'm going to go nuclear on you guys. So we're at that, that real 90 seconds before midnight.
So here's the problem that we face. And it's the reason for the bags under my eyes here, right? These are relatively new. Is it one of the great synchronicities of all time, as far as I'm concerned? Most people, I think, sort of know what synchronicity is. It's like coincidence plus, it's like Hulu plus, Peacock plus. This is coincidence plus
on steroids.
After all of this, and starting in 1945 and going on for 45 is like 79 years.
Yeah.
But it's all said and done. At the point that we are right there, able to finally end the truth embargo, at the same time, and truth embargo on an extraterrestrial presence, which the evidence is overwhelming, has a very significant connection to
Los Alamos, the nuclear weapons
development, use of nuclear weapons, and a nuclear arms race.
Sure.
At the very same time, we have, and we've been in and out over the years, but we have never been this close to nuclear war.
No.
And so the existential problem that we face, which is the use of those nuclear weapons, however it starts, and then the question is, can it be contained? And the ability to end the truth embargo are virtually at the same time.
This is it. This is where I see these two paths crossing with that. Yeah.
What are the odds?
I know.
We could have disclosed in the Clinton administration, right? We could have ended the nuclear arms race any time. We had the best opportunity we had was actually during that same period, right? 1990 to 1996. I didn't do it. And then everything else has been dragged. And then till we get to right now, right, where any reasonable person must know that and they're thinking, well, no, it can't happen because it hasn't happened, right? We almost had a nuclear war, or at least a nuclear event during the Cuban Missile Crisis, with a direct confrontation with the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
and Khrushchev, who was a pretty intense guy, famous for pounding his shoe on a table, right, to make a point about that the U.S. is our enemy and so forth. And the nuclear torpedo almost got launched, right? And we thought that was, pretty close. We're way closer than that. Worse than that.
But also then, the scenario is the other way around. That was Russia putting missiles on your doorstep. Now, the US put missiles against the agreement with Gorbachev. I won't move an inch more east. Right on the doorstep now, we've got, and everybody knows in journalism, the CIA have been in the Ukraine for years. The overthrow of the democratically elected leader in 2014 has led to this conflict. There seems to be, let me cut to the chase, a push for war on one side of it. And is that the deep state? Is that what we call the deep state, the military-industrial complex that are pushing for war in some
the military
ways?
intelligence complex is about dealing with war,
Right?
That's what they do, and
That's
so
what they do.
War. So you can discuss whether they're encouraging it or not. Encouraging, who knows?
Right, but what I'm saying is I'm linking the two together, Steve, right? We know they also know, these people, because they're connected to this whole issue of disclosure, that the aliens or the ETs or the UFOs or UAPs, whatever we call them, have interacted with our nuclear weapons.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
So they must see that the two are connected. So why would somebody be pushing for war with disclosure coming up at the same time? Because as soon as disclosure happens, if it happened in December, as you say, wouldn't that end the war? Wouldn't that end what was going to go on right now in Russia and Ukraine?
No. It's not that simple. Also, the things that are driving the risk of nuclear war right now are deep,
very deep,
substantial, connected to whole realms of history. So the idea that, they figured out maybe there's ETs here, let's just don't do. Oh no, absolutely not.
No, I mean on the behalf of the public. If that disclosure happens, wouldn't it distract the world so much? ETs are here, can't we? And we know they've interacted with nuclear weapons. Do you see where I'm coming from?
No, well, all right. We're talking about two things here.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the two things are coming together.
One thing is about how does the current situation change if we get disclosure? Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about how the current situation could blow at any moment before we get disclosure.
Yes.
And that's what I'm talking about right now. The current situation is the sum total of the actions of many countries and other areas of grievance going back 10 years, 100 years, even a couple thousand years. All right. And so it's not like it's just something we just got into difficulty with recently. No, not at all. And so we've got 4 or 5 flashpoints. The Ukraine is the worst by far. It's off the charts. And everybody wants to blame one side or the other.
Sure, yeah.
Ultimately, it doesn't matter.
No.
Okay, it doesn't matter. And so because, and believe me, there's plenty of blame to go around. Okay, but the people that want to really say it is one side's fault, they're useless, right? What their opinion is of no value. They understand there are many factors here, many players, but ultimately it's leading to a really defined situation. We saw it. We saw it in the early part of the 20th century, the lead up to World War I, right? It's been well analyzed, right?
Exactly.
There's like a thing that went on and boom, the lead up to World War II, same thing. We are seeing that now. We are seeing those two things repeated again. And so, okay, we are close to it at any time. And then in addition to Ukraine, we have an even more ancient
Israel, Iran
feud issue that goes back several thousand years.
Biblical.
And it is playing out, and it is nuclear because Iran is the nuclear player. Israel already has nukes, and the idea that could flare there is very high. And there's already anybody, I think, in Washington and in military intelligence that doesn't know and understand that if any terrorist group gets their hand on a nuke, and they may already have one, I assure you, they would use it, right? In a time and place of their choosing, which is a hell of a lot more complicated than if a nation, say North Korea, launches a nuke, all right, and blows up something. You know exactly where it came from. You know exactly the country behind it, and you're going to do what you're going to do. But a terrorist, hell, if a terrorist nuke went off, you probably have 20 different terrorist organizations taking credit for it. Who do you attack? This is all literally on the plate right now.
Sure.
The fire has been lit to levels that I didn't imagine in the Middle East. The situation in Ukraine is beyond anything I could have imagined. All right. American missiles. Look, the missile maneuver by Khrushchev was kind of obvious and dramatic. Okay. It was just
different times.
It had great, production values.
Exactly.
and bad image. the way we kind of slid some things forward and did not really observe our agreements regarding NATO expansion, not so dramatic. It takes a lot of time and so forth. And so it's kind of the same thing, but it doesn't have the same punch. So it just kind of went along. But the real problem there is not that we fired any nukes or any missiles into Russia, but rather it kept giving the new leader, going back far enough, a very strong lever to use with the Russian people and his top advisors and military to justify where he wanted to go. If you don't increase those NATO states, if you do not put some missiles places that probably shouldn't have put them, it's going to be a lot harder for us to end up here. But we still could have ended up here because Ukraine and the Russia connection transcends NATO and transcends that history. In any event, the result, of course, is now that U.S.-made missiles have actually fired into Canada, into Russia. That is the same thing of some non-nuclear but medium-range missiles, which could have, we learned later there were some nuclear missiles in Cuba already, which is why it was a good thing that LeMay's plan to invade did not happen. But I'm sure there were probably some medium-range missiles there, not nuclear. So it'd be the same thing if Cuba had fired some medium-range missiles and into Florida.
Well, and also the qualification should be made that it wouldn't be Cuban soldiers that were firing those missiles because they're not trained to do so. It would have been Russian soldiers that were on the side on Cuba firing the missiles.
Let's throw that in. They had Russian advisors there. We know. Oh yeah, sure.
Sure. So we got British guys out. We got British guys out there now advising them how to fire the Stormfire missiles.
NATO there's been some discussions about France and the UK or one other country actually putting some troops in. Meanwhile, Putin has brought in North Korean troops.
Sure.
I mean, again,
it's an escalation.
This is World War and escalation. It's incredible. So we're dancing really on the edge of this volcano. And again, you get the odd article, you get the odd mention on Drudge, but for the last 6 months, it's been 98% political stuff. And the exit of one administration and another one and all of the things surrounding it, 10,000 articles about this appointee and that appointee. But overall, I was on Grudge today. I do not think there was a single article on Grudge about Ukraine. You can go days and not see one, okay? And so we are really, really close to losing it all. Now, my prediction, I say my prediction, and nobody gives a damn. I mean, I might have no credentials, so nobody cares about my prediction. But I think it's worth mentioning that if I had to say, because we all have to make decisions about this because something really happens. We're all going to have to do something, right? There's a lot of people that are already, booking flights out of the country. They're getting bunkers, whatever the hell.
I've got friends in North Carolina who are seriously prepping.
Sure. So here's my prediction. This is what we might expect. I think the most likely thing that could happen amongst a number of things that could happen without question. Putin could very well make a calculated decision, which is not unrealistic, that he needs to end this war, get Zelensky to sue for peace. And sue for peace is not the same thing as negotiating a peace. Suing for peace means giving pretty much the other side almost everything they want to get peace, right? And so what Putin could easily do is he just fire one tactical nuke, one modest tactical nuke shell. Fire it into an area that is really not populated. Might be some soldiers, it might be some military action, but not much. Few casualties, and it goes off. Now, and I can assure you, even if it's a small tactical nuke, everybody will instantly know it's a nuclear. Right? Yeah. It's the nature of those explosions. They're quite distinct.
Of course.
And at that point, obviously, the world goes on to at that point. The European command in our what they call DEFCON system is in DEFCON 1. There was a nuclear war underway in the European theater. Not much, just a single tactic. U.S. goes on DEFCON 2 immediately. Probably every command center in the world is on DEFCON 2, and Europeans on 1. All right. Now, the situation after that is, what is the response? Now, the U.S. is not going to launch ICBMs because a small tactical nuke goes off in the Ukraine. They're going to be pretty pissed, and there's going to be a lot of calls for all kinds of things, and people are going to get hyperbolic. But overall, the national defense structures are going to say, okay, what do we do? Now, one thing you can do is to give a tactical nuke to Ukraine, or if they already have one, say, okay, you get to fire one on their side.
Wow.
Some open area in Russia, but nobody there, and just show, hey, don't do that. And of course, that's one way to do it. And that's the way that would be kind of traditional. If you're an extraterrestrial viewing us as a bunch of third grade children running around in a playground, right, pulling each other's pants down and having mud fights, you would go, yeah, that's what they'll do. But it's also the case that NATO and the United States will basically say, look, to Ukraine, you have to sue for peace, right? Whatever your future is, whatever the prospects are for people that are very Ukrainian, okay, meaning you are absolutely Ukrainian, you do not have Russian history, this is your country. Other people do have Russian history, they do have Russian heritage and so forth. It's a kind of a split country, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But whatever your prospects are for any kind of autonomy, you have a chance to work that out in time. But if this escalates, it doesn't matter. Whether you're Ukrainian or Russian, it doesn't matter. The Ukraine is going to be annihilated, and we could have a nuclear war, in which case nothing matters. And so it would be a maneuver carefully calculated to get your Zelensky to sue for peace. And the fact is, if you look at the way things are discussed now, if you look at the way the media is covering it, the statements that are coming from people, it's clear there has been a very substantial normalization in the public's mind and also in the politicians' mind that this kind of illusion that we've been carrying for so many decades called mutual assured destruction, right, which is predicated on the idea that no side is going to annihilate itself in order to get to execute a nuclear event, and therefore none of them can unless it's by accident, which non-trivial thing, right? That has been a thing. It's kind of an illusion. It's like walking by the cemetery and whistling, but we've been living that way for a very long time. Okay, and
we were told it was the way for peace.
Well, yeah, of course we didn't get peace. We got all kinds of proxy wars, and millions of people were killed. And then the other illusion, the other little trick that was in play with respect to mutual assured destruction MAD was another little thing that it helped us feel comfortable about the fact that we're standing on the edge of a volcano that could go up at any time, is that, well, any use of a nuke would not be contained, that it could escalate immediately. So no matter what it was going to escalate, and then they're all flying all over the place. And people bought that. Well, it was all basically bullshit. And so the fact is that particularly now, the normalization of an event like a tactical nuke is there, where it is a calculation that has a very realistic chance of achieving its goal. In other words, end the war in Ukraine, get what you want, all right, but don't have a nuclear war, and then start addressing these other issues after that. Does that mean it's going to be fun and games? Does that mean there's not going to be a lot more danger? No. Is there a chance that even a single use of a tactical nuke in Ukraine would eventually ultimately escalate quickly within a couple of weeks or months into multiple exchanges, and before you know it, it's all happening? Sure. But if you're a head of state and you have something you want, and you want it badly enough, and somebody tells you the odds are in your favor, 80% it works out, you do it, right? Well, what's the worst that can happen? The world ends, and you die. I mean, the head of state dies. I mean, they're going to die anyway, right? And so why not get what I want? Again, this is so simplistic that I hope I'm not insulting anybody's intelligence. But obviously, and it's much more complicated than that. But at the end, it's like with World War I and World War II. The lead up was incredibly complicated, but what launched it, right, was not complicated. And so, in other words, after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, it wasn't complicated at all. We went to war immediately, right? Now, the lead up to it had all kinds of interesting aspects and whatever, and missed opportunities, and things we did and whatever. But once the boom, and so we're the complication stuff is happening. It will continue, but the clearly simplistic beginning of this end is before us, right? In other words, it won't be complicated. It won't be like, wait a minute, we need to apply a computer to this, run a bunch of AI simulations and make, no, we're going to war. We're launching now, blah, blah, blah. That's where we are. And so my message to the Senate, and I know they're dying to hear it, right, is that hold that hearing. Get this thing done now, right? So that the new president, who will have the responsibility, assuming we haven't, it's still going on, of somehow trying to help resolve both the Middle East catastrophe and Ukraine. You'll be in the post-disclosure world.
It's just. I guess where I'm coming from is if I see disclosure as you described it, right, in December with this administration,
right,
then the testimony that backs up Robert Hastings' work that says, and Robert satisfied that, okay, not only are we being visited, not only are they here, but they have consistently for the last 79 years interfered with and highlighted. I mean, Wiltshire, where the crop circles happen, is our biggest military area, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's not a coincidence. I think there is a connection.
Oh, this is huge. I mean, there's no question. This is the next. Now then, we'll move to the second area of discussion.
Well, let me finish. Let me just finish this point, if I may, Steve. Sure. So I wanted to say that if that happened, if that disclosure happened in December, and all that evidence started to come forward in front of the public, and they could now take it all seriously, how are they going to how would war, nuclear war particularly, be justified afterwards with the next administration, with all of that coming out in front of the world population, that not only are we not alone, but they've particularly highlighted our propensity to war and indicated that we shouldn't be doing this sort of stuff because we're acting like third-rate grade kids.
Well, you say how can it be justified? Well, look, if the nuclear war could only start by holding a plebiscite in which the entire world's population was asked a vote, do we have nuclear war or not nuclear war? Definitely not. Unfortunately, nuclear war will probably be triggered by a single individual making a single decision based upon what that individual wants or believes. And so, it could definitely still happen. It is the truth embargo does not eliminate the risk of nuclear war. It simply improves the prospect of avoiding it. Now,
I agree with that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, one of the advantages of, again, the hearing, and I'll be talking. Let me get this fast. And I'll be talking about this. There's been a significant development there. Is that, and the chances of this now are far greater than ever. Is that amongst those 20 witnesses I want to see in front of the House Senate Intel Committee will be perhaps as many as 2 to 4 nuclear weapons shutdown witnesses, finally. They have been trying to get in front of a hearing for 30 years. They've done everything they possibly could. They held 2 press conferences. They testified at the citizen hearing on disclosure, which is a mock congressional hearing where they took a mock oath. The entire record of that congressional hearing, a citizen hearing on disclosure, was delivered to every member of Congress, all 535 offices. Was written up in plenty of papers. It was live streamed.
Yeah,
all during the whole thing. Yeah, and they testified, and then it was available one way or another on the citizen hearing on disclosure website for years, and then it became free on YouTube.
Yeah,
but yet, no. Still not called in, not talked to. And I know why. I mean, there's a reason for this, but because these are the most problematic witnesses for the Department of Defense, period. They are number one. They are a huge problem.
Yes.
And so their attitude was, look, we're going to have to deal with this and this and this and this, but boy, let's just keep that away. And they'll have to answer for that. So in any event, look, one of the things that people will find out, if that's the way the hearing goes down, and it will be in a sort of it'll kind of unfold over a week, is that they'll have the formal confirmation. The world will have the formal confirmation, which they don't have now, that one of the most significant things that these non-humans have done, and they've done a lot of stuff, is not crop circles.
Yep.
They're great. They look great.
Yep.
They're cool,
Yep.
fun. That's not it. It's not even taking people up for occasional examinations. That's not it. All right. Cattle mutilations, not it. It is the shutting down of our weapons several times. How many is not clear, because at some point the Air Force, I think, got on top of that. It got away from them the very first couple of times, and then at some point
once is enough, Steve, isn't it? Once is enough. Just once would be enough.
But also the Soviet Union too. So you got shutdowns. There are witnesses now. The Soviet witnesses to direct are probably not going to be available. The researchers will be available, but who knows? There might be a Soviet whatever. The point is that the world will learn they've shut our missiles down, and not just by reading a book, UFOs and Nukes, probably the most important book on the subject ever, UAPs,
no question,
ever, but by seeing it under oath on camera, millions of people at the same time. So then when the president confirms the ET presence and locks that down finally, okay, and we are now in the post-disclosure world, day one, we're off to a pretty good start in terms of, okay, it's day one in the post-disclosure world. What are we going to do with what we now know? Right. What can the government do with what they have known, but now we also know? How are we going to address the biggest problems facing the human race? There are many. Number one is nuclear war, right? Anybody that thinks that global weather shift, which is happening, is number one. I'm sorry, take a hard drink, chill out, because you're wrong. That's a problem. Nuclear war could happen tomorrow, okay? And nobody's going to give a damn what the seawater rise is going to be thereafter.
No.
And so that is number one. And right away, they will know. The ETs turned our weapons off. Why did they do that? Let's talk about that, all right? And
exactly.
So right away, we have a nice hook to start engaging that.
Exactly.
And then, of course, what is more important than that, and what's equally important, is that the entire world undergoes to one degree or another, a worldview paradigm shift. This is, of course, Danny Sheehan's, his presentation on that is at the highest level, and he's a champion of that. I have been for a long time too, and therefore every diplomat, every general, every politician, and just general citizens, right, have undergone this kind of worldview change, in which there's this huge new factor that is going to impact their thinking, and it is hoped that in that world, that new paradigm shift zone, right, that suddenly, or I like to say it, is that in the aftermath of disclosure, if you view all of the problems of the human race as each one in a room with a locked door, right? In other words, there's a problem there. It's got a door in front of it. This lock can't get in there. That disclosure is a master key that now allows you to open any one of those doors and go in, okay? You couldn't go in before, couldn't solve it. Now you can go in, you might solve it. And so in this paradigm shift zone, in this period, we start to actually have legitimate discussions, legitimate diplomacy with minimal game playing, maximum emphasis on outcome, and start solving one major problem after another. All right. And you might say, what is the one thing about this new paradigm? And there's many things that would help support that rationale. And the one that I can point to that you might view in that way is this: that it's one thing to contemplate that you're not alone in the galaxy, the universe. It's another thing to come to be convinced of it because you read this book and that book and everything else. Remember, that's you.
Absolutely.
All right, that's just you.
I know.
Okay. You can go to dinner with anybody, any group of 10 people, and 9 of them think you're crazy, whatever. It is another thing when every head of state has confirmed we're not alone. and you're in that place, it is now worldwide accepted. We're not alone in the galaxy. And if there is one or two or three non-humans from somewhere engaging us, that means the galaxy, we already know that, but it just helps to confirm where you think, yeah, first it was only us. It could only be one planet with life in the whole galaxy, but apparently there's three more, but there's only that many. There's only four. No, it means it's all over the damn place. And some gone now, but they were thriving, a million years ago. In other words, the totality of what we're living in suddenly just explodes, and the possibilities, the future possibilities for us, and adventures and knowledge and everything else expands. And the worldview change is this: what is so important to me, a citizen, or me, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, or me, the president of this country, or the dictator of that country, or the head of this religion? What is so important to me and my thing that I am willing to destroy or create havoc in light of what lays before us? It just diminishes the power of our venality, our stupidity, and our historic grudges. You pick anything, all of them become smaller in a post-disclosure reality. Does that mean that everybody's going, oh, okay, let's do it? No, it doesn't. It just means that we have at least an off-ramp that we could start heading down. It may not be steep, but we're heading down. And as things get better, they can get more better, right? And so the number one thing that will reduce the maximum amount of stress in our world, without question, right? Take stress and anxiety off the backs of more people in the shortest amount of time and give them a better outlook about their prospects, is ending the nukes. You get rid of those nukes and you have transformed this planet. Now, admittedly, you get rid of all the nukes, and there are some people who say, okay, we can't have nukes, we get that, but we're going to start building tanks. We're going to have more tanks than any other country in the world. And as soon as we get 2 million tanks, we're invading, baby. But, we can't kill them fast. We're going to have to kill them in the old-fashioned way. Maybe, right? But I'm simply saying that we have lived every second of our life, unless you are older than 78, every second of your existence, including your time in the womb, under the threat of nuclear war, right? And it's only gotten worse and worse. The number of weapons has gotten less. That doesn't matter. I think it peaked around 85,000, but you didn't need that many. We still have about 20,000. They're even more effective. There's more tech. They're faster, whatever the hell, more dangerous. And so, no, it's every bit as bad as it ever was in terms of just the weapons.
But I also think that, since nuclear weapons sort of came on our doorstep and we've been frightened of them for all these years, that there's been, an untold number of ways now that have been created that can destroy us, whether they're viruses or whether they're EMP pulses that could end, the electricity, which would cause lots of people to get, problems with hunger and starvation and so on and so forth. So there are a dozen ways that they could end, if
EMPs are nuclear weapons, but you're right. And I'm not even talking about, biochemical and genetic weapons. That's going on too, right? That's going on too. Yeah. But again, if you can get rid of the nukes,
it's one that ticked off the list, isn't it?
So, and by the way, there is a legit look. If a nation were to use a bioweapon to attack another nation, I mean a big one, that it turns out people are dying like crazy. It's like maybe 500,000 people have died, and they determine where it's coming from, and they realize that a country has unleashed this. That's the same as the nuclear attack.
It's the same.
They're going to nuke them. They're not going to say, well, as soon as we can get a bioweapon that good, we're going to come at you with that. No, they're going to nuke them. And so it's not so simple. However,
so the bigger issue then is what you say. So if we have disclosure, we haven't considered if we have first contact after disclosure. That's another possibility.
It's another possibility.
But when it does, it's about us finding out that the meaning of our lives maybe are much more than this warfare, whatever it may be, whether it's viruses, nuclear weapons, or whatever that we want to kill each other, or some people want to use to kill other people. That we then get a sense of a bigger place in the universe that gives us different perspective on life, that then changes our perspective. This is the hope, isn't it? That
There's 1,000 ways to say it, but overall, it is in fact, and there is an example. It's an extreme, but it makes the point. Here's the extreme case of worldview change. Okay, there are a number you can use, but this one is kind of well known. You got a person who's really not a nice person. They're awful, right? They're not criminal, but they're terrible, right? They screw people over. They're nasty. They're kind of vile. They're angry all the time. They have their reasons, whatever. And then one day, they almost die. And they have a near-death experience, as it's well-defined.
Yeah.
And it's a typical one, right? And they wake up. And very quickly, you realize this is not the same person. This experience has literally transformed them. And this transformation can be profound. I mean, literally profound. That is an extreme version of what we're talking about, okay? Sure. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody has to have a near-death experience so we can move on with civilization.
Oh, give them a spoonful of peyote, it'll do the same thing.
Yeah. Some people will have I'm a real asshole and I take a little ayahuasca and after that, I'm just the nicest guy going, whatever. But this is obviously bigger. We have 8 billion people. They're all living under the nuclear umbrella. They're all, at one degree or another, aware of it. The level of anxiety in the human race right now is off the charts.
Off the charts.
They have various ways to measure it. It's all terrible, all right? The only people that are relatively, how would you say, not traumatized and having to do drugs on a regular basis, interesting enough, are the people in the very poorest of countries. The ones that aren't having famines and, dying of whatever, but poorest countries, you're able to get by. They're so removed from it that they just go about their lives and they don't worry about it and they're relatively happy. Everybody else, we're all on drugs. And so what will happen in the post-disclosure world is that the issue of the shutdown of nukes will be front and center. It will go from being held off for since the events, which is 60 years ago, right? Yeah. Be held off, and then 30 years since the witnesses made the decision to come forward. Suddenly, it is number one on the list. What is going on with that? And of course, the discussion is going to be along a number of lines. One line is the message concept, which is what the witnesses believe. It was a message, not a threat. You don't, when you're ETs, you don't need to threaten, right? I mean, you don't need to, wait, you're going to threaten this to get what they want? They can get anything they want, right? Okay? And so they don't, when you're really powerful enough, you don't threat. Secondly, they let us turn them back on. So what? There's a message there. And the message, I think, is 2 parts. One, what are you doing with these damn things? What are you, nuts? Right? So consider getting rid of them. And 2, and this is a more subtle message, but non-trivial. If you are, and this is primarily the Soviet Union, U.S., right? The other countries have nukes for a little different reasons. But with us, it's existential, one against the other. That's it. China's kind of in that zone, but in any event, and they may have turned off nukes in China, but China was never going to let us know that. And I will assume they have. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But China was in a position to contain that. So the message is, look, if you're spending untold billions and billions of dollars to maintain these weapons, obviously because you have to protect yourself against yourselves because you're also dangerous. But one of the rationales that you're using internally to justify it, meaning, we need to, I think we could cut a deal with Russia. I think, if we could get the right thing on the table, we could maybe get rid of the nukes. And you're going to say, no, but we could, but wait a minute. The ETs, right? We can't get rid of the nukes, even if the Russians were willing to agree, because we've got to at least keep them in case we have to use them against the ETs. So it becomes a justification to hang on to these sons of a bitches. And the message is, no, right? So if you're using that as a rationale, shelve that because it's worthless, okay? You can't defend against us, period, all right? And I know it's hard. It's so hard for humans to get that, okay? Because we are the apex predator. We're not the apex predator. Hopefully there isn't a true apex predator, the Borg or whatever else. We're just, very clever and very dangerous. So that may be the message. That's what's going to be in play.
Well, to me, there's another addendum I could add. I think I want to add to that, Steve, as well.
Yeah.
Is that they've shown respect for our free will.
Very true.
Because it's like a parent that's taken something very dangerous from a child, and they said, "Look, you want to think about playing with this. This is dangerous," and we're giving it back to the child to make their own decision.
Excellent. And there's other aspects that will come to pretty quickly. The contact thing will come out right away. A lot of people think, well, we've had to keep the contact stuff out of the political process. I think most people understand that. They're trying to get the Congress to deal with the presence of ETs and crash vehicles is one thing. Trying to get them to deal with hybridization programs, right? No. They're not going to touch with a 10-foot pole. But right after disclosure is coming up right away. I guarantee it. And so contact is in play immediately. Okay? And it'll be accepted. It'll be confirmed. Okay, fine. Well, where does that go? Well, one of the places it goes is that once contact is confirmed to the world, then all of the accounts that have come from contactees, hundreds of thousands of them, are now evidence.
Exactly.
Material to be examined and so forth. All the contactees that are willing to sit down and talk are going to be available. And what we will learn in the post-disclosure world, what our scientists and politicians and media will learn, to those that haven't figured it out already, and some have, is that one of the threads, not the only one, that passes through the contact experiences as in the modern era, going back, it really emerges big time around the 70s. How much contact of that type was going on in the 60s? I have no idea. Maybe it was, we didn't know, but whatever. The modern era just took that. Is this? They keep giving repeatedly, consistently, messages telepathically into the brains of these people about the threat of this destruction coming.
Yep.
Right? And then we're going to learn about the schoolyard incidences, which are more than just Ruah. They're more than just Westfall. There's been many of them. They just haven't been as well known. They've been investigated, but they've been brought forward. They've been talked about, and where they do something pretty straightforward.
That recent documentary it's been out there. Sean Ryan did a great documentary.
Aerial School.
John Mack was there. That young girl talking to John Mack and telling him, what that ET beamed into her mind, that the air was all gone, and that's serious stuff, mate. For a
all
young
those kids are alive now.
I know.
All the kids.
I've given presentations, and
so what they're going to learn is that they keep landing. They land craft next to the schoolyard.
I know.
And I think in almost every case they get out of the craft. Okay, why they do that, I don't know, but they get out of the craft, and so the kids are looking, whoa, and then they head right over there. Okay, and then they start put these messages in. Same thing. Now, this will be confirmed post-disclosure. And so pretty quickly, and I'm sure that many of my colleagues and huge numbers of people that are in this field in all kinds of ways now are going to be hopefully start getting interviews, little lectures and all kinds of stuff. We're going to be repeating this message over and over again. Do you get it, folks? Do you see what they're trying to do? They want us to get rid of these new. And therefore, let's now really think about that. So it becomes in play.
That's it.
So this gives us the best opportunity.
Yeah.
Does it mean we will do it? I don't know. I will say the chances will be better than they've ever been. All right. But still, that is going to be first and foremost on the table. It has to be. So what next? We may or may not come to an agreement globally that in this new paradigm we're in, let's start reducing the nuclear arsenals down to zero. We may or may not. Can't say. However, I think there's another act in this play, as I've said many times. Not too long after disclosure, pick a time, 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, 2 years. After 2 years, I just don't see it taking that long, open contact is going to take place. And you say, well, why does it open contact take place now? I mean, if there's a message they want to reinforce, why not just have open contact now? It is their decision, obviously, that they would rather not. Okay, fine. What would be a reason for that? The most logical one is that open contact will be a little disruptive, particularly if it's not prefaced properly. Okay, it's just like, here we are now, let's sit down and talk, and people are running around, their hair on fire. So, but if you could just end this stupid lie you've been cherishing for 70 years, right? Even as our presence just manifests all the time, and more people have figured out it's a lie, just give the damn thing up, right, and disclose. And that goes global, so now it's a worldwide accepted reality. What'll happen after that? Well, obviously, the world will educate itself in every way it can about this phenomena, its history, what we know, and everything else. It will become not just something, there's ETs here, but we're going to learn a lot. We're going to educate ourselves, a learning curve. And after a certain amount of that, and it won't take long given the way things are now, right? We're going to know a lot. It will be knowledge.
That seems plausible to me, Steve.
Exactly. And at some point, which is what humans do, we'll be going, okay, I get it, and now I'm bored with it. It's like, what else you got? I mean, it's like, okay, fine. Yeah, it's no longer a big deal. We get bored with anything, all right? We get used to everything. That's why we're so many of us now. So if I'm the ETs and I want to enter and go into open contact, that's a whole different place than we are now. And so after we've gone through this transition, then open contact occurs, and everybody's going, that's cool. What have they got to say? It's appropriate. It's less disruptive. It seems the mature, responsible thing to do. And so in open contact, now we go to the next level. And I think now what the people are going to be hearing in open contact, the ETs are talking to our governments, and they're making a clear message. If you want to move forward, if you want to engage with us, you have to get rid of the nukes. And then the decision will ultimately be made, get rid of them or don't get rid of them. Okay? And so now the next question is a good question. Why 2 years? I mean, they can do it whenever they want to, right? Why not give us, I don't know, another 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 years after disclosure? If we don't have the nuclear war, maybe they can come down then or whatever. Why overdo it? Why keep pressing the matter? Okay? And because there's a legitimate reason. There's another reason why we might follow the responsible but near-term approach, is that they're as aware as we are how close we are to blowing ourselves to smithereens. Okay, and so the sooner the better. It's one reason. And the response I get from that is, that's okay. They'll stop the nukes in midair, turn them into flowers or something like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I'm saying, you can't bet on that. Don't even think about betting on that. That's not a bet you ever want to make. And so why would they do 2 years? Because there is one more major variable in this saga that starts in 45, essentially, and it's now 79 years in. And that is this. Is the human race, is the science that we are learning, the technology we're developing, are we getting closer to being able to travel to Alpha Centauri? Are we getting to the point where we can travel like they travel? I don't know how they travel. I think it's star to star. Some say it's interdimensional. I don't really give a damn how they travel, but are we getting closer to being able to do what we know they can do? Right? Some people say, oh no, they're not traveling star to star. They have a secret base in the moon. They've been there for like 10 million years. Or they live in a volcano, whatever the hell, right? I mean, neglecting the fact that they have told contactees repeatedly, we're from the stars, right? They even told the Egyptians that, whatever. How close are we to getting the point where we can travel like they do? And the answer, I'm going to tell you with high confidence, is we're really close. We're close, like 20 years, maybe 25 years, maybe 10 years. Now, figuring it out first, and then you got to build something that goes there, okay? But, that's what we do, right? I mean, we figured out atomic physics, had it kind of really down by around 1920. It only took us 25 more years to build the bomb, right? And our science is even stronger now than it was. I think we're close to that. So why does that matter? Again, let's don't overthink it. It's not complicated. It's never been complicated. If we are going to go out into interstellar space with ships, like in our movies, we're not going to be carrying, we're not going to go unarmed. We're going to take our weapons into space. Absolutely. There's just no way in hell. Yeah. Star Trek was about going where no man had gone before. And
they took their photon torpedoes with them.
And, new relationships and everything else. And they had all kinds of shit there. We got this and that, and torpedoes, whatever the hell. And even nukes. Okay, even nukes. And so, of course, we're going to take our weapons with us. Again, this is not a complicated thing. Now, if you imagine, let's turn it around. We develop star-to-star travel. And naturally, we put some weapons on our ships in case we run into it. We head on out. And we go to the Centauri system. By the way, there is a very interesting planet in the Centauri system, which is being looked at very carefully because it has the potential to be a life-giving planet. Who knew? It's the closest system to us, right? Whatever.
It's still 4.5 light years, isn't it? Something like that.
We're cruising around there, paying attention, and we drop in from time to time. And then eventually we discovered that the people on that, the entities on that planet developed nuclear weapons. They dropped them on each other. They're working on all kinds of stuff, but they've got nuclear weapons. And then we learned that they're getting close to building ships like we have. What do you think we would do? What do you think we would do?
This is this scenario is straight out of Star Trek, isn't it? The first contact scenario when they're monitoring civilizations that are just about to develop warp drive. They watch and.
So this has been in science fiction. It's been played up. We get that. What hasn't been done, what has never been rendered on the screen. If you want to do it, call me. I'm happy to advise. I'm happy to be a consultant to your $20 million movie. Is this? They have not portrayed this. Okay. If we did that, does anybody think that we would just go, oh boy, that's a problem. Let's get on back home and arrive back home and say, look, we've just learned that that system over there that we've been monitoring, they've mastered nuclear physics. They've built bombs, and they're very close to building a starship. I sure hope they don't find us. Is that what we're going to do? No. We're going to deal with that. We will have to deal with that. You have to deal with that, okay? It's like finding out that your neighbor is building a nuclear bomb, and you just go, well,
let's hope he doesn't fire it one day.
Right to bear arms. You don't even report him to the police. Of course you do. And they're doing that. In my mind, it's absolutely that. And so they have to deal with it. So how do you deal with it? Well, they could annihilate us. And there's about 4 or 5 ways they could utterly annihilate us. There wouldn't be enough people left to hold a soccer game. All right. They haven't done that. All right. They could destroy all of our nuclear weapons, and they haven't done that. All right. And so forth. So where it goes is, if in open contact, then the discussion is you've got to get rid of the nukes. And then I get to the final point. And the point that I was making is that is the variable that's been missing in most of the discussions. Their patience is not unlimited.
Good.
I think they were hanging around back 10,000 years ago. I think they've been coming and going. Who knows? Different ones. Doesn't matter. The lore seems to point to that. There's a lot of evidence. Obviously, it's not conclusive. It's very old. But the point is, I think they've been around. So, okay, why don't they just hang out? No, because we are close to interstellar drive. And so now we have to either become part of their world, right? Or they're going to have to deal with it. All right. Now, how do you deal with it? Again, they can annihilate us, but it's a much easier answer, much easier solution. They turn off our nukes and we turn them on. Well, they can also destroy our nukes, so we can't do anything with them. And so consequently, I think the way it'll go is you've got to get rid of the nukes. No, we don't. Well, fine, build your ship. You'll never leave the ground. I mean, it's just never going to leave the ground. We can destroy it. It will, right? Anytime we want. So you build them, we'll destroy it. You build them, we'll destroy it. No problem. That's irritating. It's wasting our time, but we could destroy you completely, but we're not that kind of alien, okay? You guys would destroy an entire continent given a chance. We don't do that kind of stuff because we're more mature. And so that is the simple dynamic I believe that's at play. And so, if we get disclosure, I expect open contact. If we get disclosure, the the new question is immediately going to be in the forefront and so forth. And so it's all headed towards, technically, the end to our most dangerous issue. And if we can get rid of the nukes, if we actually get to that place of cooperation, then there's a lot of other things we could get rid of. And then there's a lot of things we could improve. And so the post-paradigm may be the ticket to a functional world that is, in fact, worth being born into and not constantly reminding us we'd rather leave. Okay, now I'll bring you to the conclusion of our little chat today. And this is dramatic, and it's just happened, is that the likelihood of the nuclear weapons tampering witnesses testifying under oath has just been accelerated dramatically.
Really?
After 30 years. And I've been trying to archive all the articles about it, and it looks like there's quite a few. So I'm going to put out a special archive of all the news articles going back. Pretty much they don't start until about 2010 or something, whatever the hell. But there is a Minot article. It goes back to 1967 in the Minot Daily News. Whatever the hell it is. I'm gonna archive all the news articles that actually referred to this that still didn't lead to anything. You've got the press conference in 2010 where they came in and spoke to quite a few media, generated a number of articles, handed out, and presented the film and everything else, but it didn't, nothing from the Congress, nothing from the government, no effort at all to bring them in. Then they testified at the citizen hearing on disclosure. We presented that to the entire Congress, nothing, right? Then they came back in 2019 and they held another press conference, a couple of the witnesses. This time they couldn't get so many press there, only a limited number. However, CNN was there because they were doing some sort of a shoot, and they actually interviewed Bob. That was nice. Didn't see anything come of that, but still, it was progress. But when they came on 2019, they brought, I believe it was 2010. I'm going to check. It's either 2010 or 2019. It's cooler if it was 2010. But which one? They brought quite a few affidavits. Hang on a second. Just a second. Hang on.
Sure.
Just a second. Let me go right here. Not blow the mic out. All right, here we go. I can talk about this freely. I have no fear.
Okay.
I've already discussed this with the appropriate people. They had with them a fairly substantial group of affidavits from 9 of the witnesses.
Okay.
All nuclear related. Most of them were shutdowns, but there was Rendlesham Forest. There was also the Robert Jacobs event where he filmed the tampering with a dummy warhead by a saucer at 8,000 miles an hour. And they brought a bunch. There weren't that many press there. So Bob gave all the leftovers, about 50 to me. And they've been in my office either since 2019 or 2010, just sitting there. And then, of course, things started getting going, right? Yeah, getting going. All right, so we had the Grush hearing. And then it was clear they were going to have another hearing. The Grush thing came on pretty fast, right? And it was going to be about Grush, period. All right. So as we were approaching the next hearing, I said, okay, I'm going to make a move here. And so I took these with a cover letter from Bob, and I hand delivered 10 of these affidavit sets to the appropriate members of the oversight committee.
Okay. Dems
and Republicans. All right. About 5 days later, I mailed a set in to a specific individual in the office. That was a hand deliver. Then you got the mail coming in. And that's coming in about 10 days later. So 2 sets of affidavits came into those 10 offices. So far, so good. All right. And then
when was this, Steve? Tell me when this was.
This is in the 10 days leading up to the
recent hearings.
November 13th hearing.
Okay.
Right. I think I started about maybe 10, 12, maybe 2 weeks before,
All right.
anticipating this hearing, right? Okay. And so, okay, fine. The hearing goes down, and I'm in there, and Bob and I told Bob to come out, right? And because I had a number of people that wanted, how can we get in this hearing? And I said, well, I know how to do it. So and I sent them these instructions, and I said, here's what you got to do, okay? These are the things you're going to have to do if you want to get in that room. And one of the things they had to do was they had to be in front of the Longworth building at 5 a.m.
Right. I've seen one of the interviews you've given. There's people camped out there, right?
Yeah. And we were there. Most of the people that I talked to were there, including Bob Salas, 84 years old.
84 years old.
32 degrees in front of the Longworth building. So we waited 2 hours, and we got in at 7 o'clock. Then we had to wait 4.5 more hours, okay? And when we got in, and we got in line, all right, which it was more organized this time. They had they had the ribbons, those
like
things,
the intestines you get at the airports.
Yeah, the kind of stuff. So keep it in order. It's only good. We got in line. We were about 20, maybe 28. By the time we entered the room, there were about 100 seats in there. They took out the stadium seats, which was because that was cool. They had the stadium seats last time, and I got in, and I was in the photo, and so you're sitting up, and they get your cue, but they wanted to get more seats in, so they took those out and they put in just floor seats, right?
Okay.
And so they got another 20 people in there. I'm thinking there was 100 seats in there. When I finally got in, there was about 20 seats left. So about 55 people cut in line.
Oh, I heard that. I heard Darcy Weir. Darcy Weir gave an interview the other day, and he said it was terrible, the people who were cutting in line.
And so whatever. So we got in, Bob and I, and we watched this hearing. Okay. Now, and this comes under the heading. There's a lot of people that are famous for this quote. Many people have used this quote. So I won't pick one of them, but one of the great quotes, one of the great truths of being a human being is that 90%, some say 80, I say it's 90% of success in your life is showing up. If you just show up, wonderful things can happen.
100%,
you don't show up, nothing happens.
100% of failure is don't show up. Yeah.
Yeah, don't show up. So, all right. So the hearing is over. Now, one of the characteristics of where we are now in terms of this movement is now you have these events happening, and then other entities are scheduling stuff to work on that, right? To piggyback on that. You're piggybacking. This is a sign of more advanced activism. And so there was 30 minutes after the end of the House hearing, the MUFON and New Paradigm Institute held a briefing, I guess you could say, just south of the building, just across the street. Beautiful weather. Had about 100 people show up, where Jim Garrison, the head of the New Paradigm Institute Washington office, introduced Danny Sheehan, the head of the New Paradigm Institute. And then he introduced Ron James, who is the head of media for all of MUFON. And also, he's an activist too. I mean, he's interviewing, he's dealing with more people on the Hill than anybody that I know of. And then they introduced Dave McDonald, who is the chairman of the board of MUFON. And so that was about the fact that there is the potential for a collaboration between MUFON and the New Paradigm Institute, citizen outreach and so forth, sophisticated. And then they let me chat a little bit. I talked briefly about New Paradigm Institute, but what I really wanted to do was introduce Bob Salas. And so I then introduced Bob Salas, who's standing next to me. And then he talked about, of course, what did he talk about? He talked about why he was there and this deal. Okay, so far so good. Then I think a very nice lady spoke, and then eventually we're done. Now I should mention that another event was piggybacked as well. This was much more extensive. At 5:30, the UFO UAP Disclosure Fund, which is a 501c4 political entity, right? The first of its kind, I think, in this field, based out of San Francisco, with a lot of high-level people and I think some decent money. They held a VIP invite-only event up on the Hill for some witnesses, members of Congress, some certain media, and so forth.
Really?
My invite got lost in the mail. I'm sure it's what happened. So, but they did that. Okay, but meanwhile, what happened is Tyler Roberts had arranged an interview with Nancy Mace as part of a little doc or something he's putting together.
Right.
She'd given interviews to I think Ron James and a number of times, as Ron has been interviewing everybody in the Hill, it seems. And so she agreed. So far, so good. But then I'm talking with Tyler, and he got the idea of, wouldn't it be cool if Bob Salas were to come up with him? And then he said, wouldn't it be cool if you came along? And I said, oh, yeah. And so what happened next is that I was scheduled for 7. I got there at 7 ahead of time because they changed the time. I didn't know it. So I just came in the office, sat down, and she came out.
Nancy Mace.
And sat down, and we had a 20-minute discussion. The first time I'd met with anybody on those committees, and it went very well. She's a highly intelligent person.
She seems
no
ballsy.
question.
Was it with Immaculate Conception? She said, bring it on.
Oh, yeah. And she's got guts. Without getting into any politics whatsoever.
I should say Immaculate Constellation, not Immaculate Conception, sorry.
Yeah. That's a whole nother event, right? It went very well. Then Tyler and Bob showed up, and then we actually had an interview in her office discussing the nuke witness issue. And Tyler filmed it all. And the short clip of that is already making the rounds on the internet. I'm linking it on my Twitter. And then he posted the full thing, right? Which is, it's kind of like a podcast doc, whatever. And of course, it's even more. And so essentially the full 20-minute interview with Mace is now getting around. Meanwhile,
that's out there now, is it? I haven't seen it. Really?
That's out.
Let me have a link for that, and I'll put that in the link
haven't
in the description.
Even really, it's got a lot of promotion that's going to happen. And so there is, and then of course, I let her know that there were 2 hard copies of the affidavits in her office, but the question is where. And she's got about 20 staff. But then the next day, I sent an electronic file of the affidavit set to her key staffer. So that's in her office.
Wow.
And I'm extremely excited. Okay.
I'll bet you
I'll
are.
win. Okay.
Yeah.
But it gets better.
Oh.
Why? Because, well, as we know, not long after that, a few days later, Senator Gillibrand confirmed that the potential November 19 briefing was on, and ultimately the room where it was going to be held was listed, and it was out there. But again, just a few days, and so nothing like we saw in the Grush hearing or the 13th hearing was going to happen, and I knew that, and so I said, okay, I'm definitely going to go to that, and so on the 19th, headed on down. Got there about 2.5 hours early, just to be sure. This was a Senate hearing room, bigger. Okay, Senate bigger. And at 4:30, we went in to listen to a briefing. Now, here's what's cool about that. It was a briefing, not a hearing, and this is what she's held, a number of them. And they're invariably with her and Senator Ernst. And they've held a couple of these, usually in an office. Person sits down, Kirkpatrick, so forth, and they don't take an oath, but they're giving them, they're asking questions and getting a heads up on what's going on. That's not the hearing. That's not a hearing. It's a briefing. Now, some may not care, but it's notable. All right, no big deal. Love it. Gillibrand has been leading on this. And been more active, I think, than others. But obviously, the Senate has had a number of things develop there. And so, but what I learned before I went in is that I knew that there was a private meeting between her and the person that was coming to see her, which is Kozlowski, the new director of Aero. That was replacing Kirkpatrick.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. They had a private meeting, and then she's holding a public meeting. She didn't have to hold a public. She could just had a private meeting with them, right? Filmed or not filmed. But no, private, public. And then I learned, and I believe this is true, and if it's not, I'll be corrected probably eventually, but it seemed like my source was pretty good on this, that it wasn't just a private meeting with Kozlowski, it was a SCIF meeting with Kozlowski. Okay. Now, a SCIF, for those who don't know, is a secure compartmented information facility, which is another way of saying there's no way in hell that you're going to be able to eavesdrop on that meeting.
And sitting in a Faraday cage on steroids, yeah.
And the reason you do that is if you have the intention of asking some questions which you do not want to be made public, period, and you're going to be hearing answers you do not want to be made public, then you hold it in a skiff. That is very significant. So we can only speculate on what she asked, but I have some ideas. And then, why do you hold a public hearing? Well, there was a reason, right? She just wasn't getting information. She wanted to do something else. She wanted to introduce the new director of Aero to the world, which he did because it was filmed live. Now, I think C-SPAN did it. About 8 or 9 entities filmed the November 13th hearing, more than before. Millions of people have probably already seen it, and it's also archived. But this was maybe not as many, but I think C-SPAN filmed it, whatever. She's introduced Kozlowski to the world. Needed to do that. Why? Because Aero had gotten into a very awkward place. Caught between a rock and a hard place, an impossible situation. It led to unfortunate developments, an attack on Grush by the director, a grotesque, bogus study that was issued in an effort to staunch the situation, try to push back against what the inevitable was, particularly Schumer. The resignation of Kirkpatrick, it was going to coincide with that report, and so forth. Aero had lost a great deal of its substance or confidence in it. It was getting trolled.
Yeah,
it wasn't good. So they got a new director. They're not gonna do away with it. They got a new director, and I'm pretty sure that he is coming in to set the ship aright in whatever way is needed. And so she wanted to introduce him. It's a new director, new Aero, guy's totally qualified. He answered the questions very well. Now, the questions were pretty safe. There wasn't anything that was going to shake up the troops. He introduced some work that Aero had done on a couple of well-known sightings that they apparently had resolved, like the Go Fast. I wasn't overly convinced by that, but nevertheless, look, we solved that problem. And that's fine, right? In other words, we're doing our job. We're running these things down. But then he said, well, there's a couple we haven't been able to resolve, and he mentioned one, and he discussed it. And anybody that heard that were going, you're never going to resolve that one, baby. That there is no benign explanation of that. And I'm going, that was a little gift to us, meaning here's one we can't resolve. Now, again, if it's nonsense or something, they wouldn't even be dealing with it. But apparently they feel it's a very legitimate case. And let me tell you, if you go listen to that hearing and listen to him describe this, you'll go, oh yeah, there is no benign explanation for that. Okay, so whatever, very, very positive. But something happened that I didn't expect. This is under the showing up heading. Usually they exit in the back. They just leave and they go off from the behind the panel where they are. And maybe they could have. I think there was a door there, but she didn't. She exited through the front. She came up the right side. Ron James was filming, and he moved in very quickly to ask her something, right? And I said, hello, and I came right up. And so I was able to interact with Senator Gillibrand for the first time. Now, let me say this. I knew this already. I mean, there's not a nicer, more convivial person you would want. I mean, just very nice, very straightforward, very pleasant, very polite. It's just very wonderful to meet her. I knew it would be that way. So what did I do? I mentioned to her that earlier that day, I had dropped off a set of the affidavits in her office. Okay, right? And by the way, Bob Salas is one of the witnesses to the nuclear shutdown. He's been trying to get a hearing for years. Would you be willing to talk to him? Yes, I would.
Wow.
Okay. Yes, I would. All right. And I said, great. And I said, well, I'll let him know. And obviously we'll revisit that. And then I got the cards for 2 of her chief aides, and as she told them to give me the cards. And then I have already sent electronic copies of the affidavits to them. And so all of that is in her office. And now you've got the Tyler Roberts video and interviews out there. And so I can say with high confidence, for the first time since 1967, the testimony of the nuclear witnesses to the most important things we know about ETs, that they have shut down our nuclear weapons, is now in play on Capitol Hill. And then the question is, who is going to be the committee, or what is going to be the committee? Who is going to be the committee chair that brings those men in and puts them under oath. And obviously that is my number one priority going forward through the rest of this year, into next year. I'm going to do my best not to become a pain in the ass, which is easy to do if you're an activist. Try to be responsible, and not drive them crazy. It's like the crazy person that calls you up about once an hour and says, we met at the
What about that affidavit?
Yeah, you sure you don't want out with me? We'll go to a movie, right? No. So I'm going to work on that. And of course, I have many more affidavits. And one of the next things I'm going to do when they come back in session, which is early December, is I'm going to very politely hand deliver a set of affidavits to every one of the rest of the Intel committee. There's 16, so I'm going to have to make some more copies.
Yeah.
But and I'm just considering maybe handing maybe not everybody, maybe 6 or 7 of the members of the Armed Services Committee a set of affidavits. In other words, one way or another, they're never going to be able to get away from the nuclear weapons witnesses from now on, right? Unless I keel over. If I keel over, they're free. And so, but this was inevitable. Believe me, these people are not stupid. There are plenty of people out there that are very serious about this, so serious like Burchett that he can't help himself. He goes on television and says, there's extraterrestrials here. The government's lying about it, and it's illegal. And he's a member of Congress. But so they're going to do this. But you might say, well, why didn't they do it sooner? If they're serious, why not sooner? This has been going on pretty intensely for 7 years, certainly the last 4. And here is the best explanation I can give, and we can finish with this. From the standpoint of the truth embargo and the Department of Defense's policy of embargo, which they have brilliantly maintained and succeeded on for 77 years, there have been many events, many things happened. Roswell was a bit awkward, particularly because they put the press release out and said, hey, we got a saucer. Fortunately, though,
it was a weather balloon.
Yeah, they didn't say, we have a saucer, right? Which is kind of, straightforward. They didn't say, we have this odd object that we found in this ranch. No, they said we have a flying saucer. And fortunately for them, unfortunately for us, the second crash site had not been encountered yet. So they didn't know about bodies when they put that press release out. Otherwise, the press release could have been, we have a flying saucer in the pilots, right? In which case, Truman would have had a much more difficult problem, because what was General Ramey going to hold up in the briefing later that day? It wasn't, a dead ET, a raccoon or whatever. So anyway, but in all this time, the shutdown of the nuclear weapons was the absolute most difficult matter for them to deal with, because for many reasons, not the least of which is that nothing pointed out the national security insufficiencies that we have with respect to the ET presence than that. Nothing raised the, quote, threat, ultimate threat possibilities than that. And they absolutely could not go there. And and so Bob Salas comes forward in 1994. That's when it becomes, it was sort of floating, okay? But
he told me that he'd heard one of his colleagues giving a radio interview, and that's what sparked him on. I think that's what he told me when I met him.
Well, he heard that, but the decision to come forward, though, because he had a lot at risk, was based on the fact that maybe it was the radio thing that prompted him to do this, but he sent an FOIA into the Air Force.
Yeah,
and smartly, he didn't mention UFOs or UAPs. He couched it so he was trying to get information about things at that time and such, and he got some stuff back. And what he got back, for as far as he was concerned, confirmed what he knew.
Right. Okay.
And then he made a second calculation. And this is called good trouble. He said, well, they kind of outed themselves with that. Yeah, they kind of referred to it, didn't mention the UAP. And so my NDA is open now. And so he charges ahead. Okay. Now that could have gone badly.
Yeah, of course.
So he comes out in 94. Now, pretty quickly, obviously, the DOD learns about this, right? They only have 3 options. They just have 3 options. Well, actually, there's 4 options. I'm sorry. There's 4 options. one, they can kill them.
Yep.
Anybody that comes forward, you just kill them, right? Next day, automobile accident, fell off the balcony, got drunk, fell in the swimming pool, whatever, they just kill them. The second possibility is disgrace them. They've done that.
Yep.
But they got a number to disgrace. I mean, they got to disgrace about 6, 7 guys, or maybe just the top 2. The rest will get the message. So disgrace them. In other words, suddenly a huge scandal develops that just totally ruins.
Okay.
Option number, those 2 options are very problematic, because if you're going to murder or disgrace SAC base officers, which is like the creme de la creme in terms of how would you say gravitas. You're going to end up probably with a mutiny in the Strategic Air Command, because the other guys are not going to sit by and put up with that shit. And so can't do that. The third one was compromise. I mean, not compromise and bring them in, right? In other words, say, look, tell you what, if you could just stop talking about that, there's some prizes for you behind, door number 2, door number 3, and what have you. I doubt that they even considered it, because the men that were coming forward, not all of them, but some of the men that were coming forward, weren't just some guys in the Air Force. These are men that were vetted, tested, and the decision was made that you are of a substance that we are going to let you take turns along with a counterpart in the control center of an ICBM flight. 10 missiles, I think, is what they had at Maelstrom, and then there was another 8, whatever, doesn't matter. And here's the deal. If the codes come down from the president, the right codes come down from the presidents, you are ordered to turn the keys and launch those missiles, which will kill millions of people. That's who they are.
Yep.
And so they have come forward because they believe that people needed to go the truth, and you're going to go and you're going to turn them based on giving them some prizes or, a house in Boca Raton. No. So that's out. And that left only one other option. Ghost them.
Which is what's happened.
Bob who?
Yeah.
Jameson who? David who? No.
I'll have my people look into that. Hang on.
The reporter calls up. If you heard about this, I have no idea what you're talking about. So they ghosted him. Now, that's tricky. But in the context of the entire truth embargo and most of that era, from 94, because things were still pretty bad, the media by and large was still compromised in the sense that they weren't doing the job, though they got better and better. All right, that's another reason why this is all going to happen now. And so the media's position, which has always been, we will cover this stuff, we will write it up, but we're not going to piss on the Department of Defense porch. All right? And they've done that every year. Hundreds of articles, now thousands of articles about this and that and everything else, which has helped advance the truth embargo. But we're not going to go over a line. And that includes sending out investigative reporters to try to get moles, okay? Going through the trash cans behind the Pentagon, trying to find documents. Not going to do that. And they're capable of it. No. And so in terms of what unfolded regarding the witnesses as they came forward, which generated some articles, in terms of a very important book, in terms of the documentary, in terms of the press conference, the DOD had nothing to say, no comments, nothing. And so the press sort of went, we're going to let that one go. We're going to let it lie. We're not going to push it. Because I assure you, there was more than enough very profound substance for any number of reporters in that briefing room at the West Wing of the White House to stand up and say, I have in my hand a book called UFOs and Nukes, which has 100 interviews and dozens of witnesses saying they turned our nuclear weapons off in 1967. No, they didn't do that. They weren't going to do that. And that is how it was possible for Bob Salas, David Schindele, and Mr. Fenstermacher, who was passed, and Robert Jacobs, and others, and these affidavits, to not see a hearing room on the Hill. But not surprisingly, that game was going to end at some point. And it looks like I'm going to have a little part in that. So we'll see.
Well, congratulations.
Now, we'll see. Well, again, there's others. There's others that are going to be joining in this very quickly. And so that's the story of that. Bob Salas, has waited 34 years for this. I
Oh,
assure
I
you.
hope he gets his day. I really do.
Nobody deserves.
No.
Hey, look, I'm just saying. Medal of Freedom material, right? I mean, every one of them should get it. But Bob has
Sure.
led this movement. And so a Medal of Freedom from some president in the future. So this gives you an outline of where things are at. We've got some wins. We got some losses. We've had some incredible turmoil. And if it wasn't for the situation in Ukraine and the re-blow up in the Middle East at a time when Iran is closing in on a bomb, which means they're either going to come up with a bomb or Israel is going to blow the hell out of it. I mean, they're going to blow up everything that even remotely looks like it's, the centrifuge, everything else, which then could trigger other things. If it wasn't for those two things, I'd be dancing, I'd be dancing around my office, to the music. Okay. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And so it's hard to not feel the anxiety to be this close.
Well, I think there's something in that synchronicity that we talked of earlier. To wind back to that, to circle back to that. There's, the time of this disclosure thing being in front and center. And to the extent that it is, and this nuclear issue being on the table for us at our time in history. I don't know. Something fated in that, maybe. Who knows? So
far, so good. Well, I'll tell you what, Gary. Feel free to edit this for length if you need to. But this, I really felt like I got a message out a little more cohesive than normal, and that's a great opportunity. And of course, able to talk about Bob.
Sure.
So let's see what's on the table. Let's do some promos real quickly, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
There are every day or every month new organizations are forming around this issue because it's game time. And it's not surprising that most of these are actually forming, anticipating disclosure. They may be trying to do something to help get there, but they're already anticipating the new world. And so you got the newparadigminstitute.org. All right. All kinds of stuff going on there. They've raised some good money, but this is an entity that needs lots. This is an entity that really needs and can use millions of dollars. So all you billionaires out there, and every month there's another one, right? Particularly crypto billionaires, God knows. There's a lot of wonderful causes out there, but this may be the most important of all. So newparadigminstitute.org. Check in with them.
Yep.
And then you've got the Soul Foundation out of Stanford, which was put together by Gary Nolan, science think tank, 501c3. They just held a meeting.
In San Francisco. Yeah, Chrissy Newton's there, isn't she? Yeah.
So that's about people starting to get together to figure out the science we're going to be dealing with post-disclosure.
Yep.
Okay? Yeah, that tells you something, right? And you got the UAP Disclosure Fund, which is out of San Francisco. 501c4, political, substantial people involved, money involved. They just held a significant event on Capitol Hill. That's how you meet people. That's how you make connections. So I assume they're going to be doing more of that. And they're going to be a major player in the post-disclosure world. Fund them. Okay? And then you've got, on my end of the world, you've got HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. This was set up a year ago with Dan Harari, the Hollywood publicist. We have 183 members now. We have broken up into two groups, UAP and Hollywood. It's a nonprofit 501c3 networking entity. In other words, everybody get together, make some content, make some docs, make some movies, make some money, for God's sakes. Get together, network, whatever. That's what we do. Okay? We could use some funding because there's other stuff we could do. We could do events. We could do presentations. We could do more. We could do a lot of things. HollywoodDisclosure.org. So help there. If you think you're someone that would be a member because of your background in the UAP area or in film and media production, get in touch with me or Dan, and we'll submit your consideration to the executive committee. So that's only a year old, and it's doing great.
Fantastic.
And there's docs. Let me tell you, the Hollywood is doing stuff. It's coming. Hollywood is on board now. I just want the Hollywood guys, the big shots, to not forget about all the people in our world that know this stuff, and make sure they're advising and participating in these projects, and not just rely on some people that they're good at making film, but they wouldn't know a UFO from a Boston cream pie.
Yeah.
And so that's going. Paradigm Research Group is now a 501c3, and I'm about to put up the portal. In other words, the landing page in front of the old site, so that it can receive for the first time tax-deductible funding 28 years in. And so, and I have many projects that I could do as that funding comes in. Not huge, I'm not going to be big, and it will be more like a think tank, less like just a lobbying and activist. It'll be more like a think tank. We have a board of directors. We'll have probably some consultants and so forth. But that flash page will go up soon, and so Paradigm Research Group would welcome funding and get a tax deduction. And then let's see, Contact in the Desert is soon going to announce its next states and the initial group of speakers. Potential for Contact in the Desert to be bigger than ever next year is certainly there. All right, so that's something else to promote. Is there anything else?
There's a bunch of stuff happening, isn't there? There's podcasts popping up. I see new podcasts being introduced. UAP podcast show, and
absolutely,
it's happening.
James Fox's film Phenomenon just broke.
Oh, really?
I didn't know about
that.
The program. James Fox's film, the program.
The program.
Broke.
Okay.
I think Ron James's trailer for the Accidental Truth Next probably coming out pretty soon, right? And there's other docs in the works. So there's the information is coming out. It's reaching the public. It's all kind of stuff. Technically, we're there. We need some politicians.
Well, I think this is what's frustrating for some people, isn't it? Because there's, I know James's work on Virginia in Brazil. I know Marco. They say that case has been around for so long. It's such a big case, and everybody knows about it. So I guess people on that side of things are frustrated by the pace at which the disclosures.
Sure. No case though is going to end the embargo.
No.
No sighting is going to. I don't even pay attention to sightings.
Yeah.
There's another sighting.
I know.
So what? No problem. This is a political thing now, right? And so we have to have some key politicians make a final decision to wrap this up. And then I'm going to finish with this. I keep saying that, don't I? I am going to finish with this, which is a very interesting story. 2 days ago or 3 days ago, we lost one of the people that have worked in this field for decades. And I'm talking about Chris O'Brien, who is an amazing guy, lecturer, writer, and did some great research in a number of areas, of course, Mysterious Valley and all that. But he's also worked on many, many docs, while his health deteriorated badly. Over the years, worse and worse and worse. Multiple health issues, diabetes, lung issues, and so forth. Well, it caught up with him. Now, here's the point. The day he died, when he was working on a doc for Ron James, he was working on a doc. He was working on this subject until the day he died, just like Stanton Friedman, who was coming back from a lecture and had a heart attack at the airport. And this is not the only instances of that. When you're involved in an issue of this magnitude, you do not retire from it.
No.
You stay on it until the end. And, well, I wish those who have power and influence and resources and connections in the film industry would maybe get how I appreciate that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
okay?
Absolutely.
And so Chris was by himself. He had a critical incident, mostly breathing, and I've gotten pretty good. The autopsy's not done yet, but he has huge lung problems. He's on a number of things to be able to breathe. That it started to go bad. He didn't have the full medicines, and so he jumped in the car to go to the emergency room. On the way, either he lost consciousness because of the inability to breathe, or he had a heart attack. He certainly could have, and he had a heart attack, and his car then crashed into something. And did the crash kill him? Did he have a heart? Don't know. The point is, it's all tied together.
Sure.
Okay. And so he died. Eventually, Ron, he was supposed to pick up Ron, I think the next day or that evening, I think it was the next day, but obviously he wasn't there. Ron came in and eventually learned by making some calls that he had died in this accident. I think he went to the hospital possibly to get more information, but in any event, he drove to the crash scene. You do that. He wanted to see where it happened because he's known Chris for 25 years. Right. He's a friend, and he's working on his doc.
Sure.
So he drives to the crash scene. And this is where things get, this is where one's worldview needs to open up a little bit, right? Okay. I have a pretty tight worldview. I mean, believe me, I am surrounded by people that are way out in left and right field, all kinds of stuff. A lot of it's almost absolutely certain, but I can't go there. I'm just a basic guy, little Newtonian physics, right? I can go relativity. quantum is a challenge, but whatever. But then there's other realms. Well, he goes out there. What happened when he lost control of his car? He crashed into, and this is very typical of Sedona, there is a promotional, I guess you call it sign, for an entity there, right? To let you know it's there, okay? And it's got rocks. It's kind of, it's a bunch of rocks in a nice, it's kind of like a monument kind of thing, about, I don't know, maybe 3.5, 4 feet tall. And he crashed into that, which means that, if there was no braking, the crash was significant.
Yeah.
When he got there, all that had been removed.
Okay.
Well, this rock sign, was for the Church of Christ. There was a Church of Christ there. This is the Church of Christ sign. And when Ron got there, because it was, damaged, and when you look at it, the T was gone. And so it said Church of Chris.
No.
That is what the sign said. And so Chris O'Brien died, crashed into a sign in front of a church called the Church of Christ. And when the accident was done, what was left was Church of Chris. Now, I want you to run the math on that and calculate the odds. And so, I know a lot of people hearing this right now are going, "Oh yeah, I get that. I know what's going on there."
There's a lot of people going to love that.
But again, all I can say is,
wow.
I try to stay close to Occam's razor, but my mind is not closed. The world is more than we know, and who knows? But it is and that photo is going to get around. Okay, what an interesting thing to leave by accident to the world.
Wow,
he deserves it, right? And it's just, what can I say?
Yeah.
But let me be clear. Am I trying to imply that the UAP issue and the pursuit of it is a religion? No, it is not. It is not. That was a ploy used against it years ago to try to undermine. It's all bullshit. No, it's not. That was Chris. So I'll leave you all with that. Gary, I'm looking forward to coming to the UK. By the way, very soon, I got to start doing this. Very soon, I'm going to do something that I did 14 years ago.
Okay.
No, 16 years ago. I'm going to go on my social media and put out a statement that I want to do a third European speaking tour. I've done 2 and 1 in Australia, but I want to do a pretty robust speaking tour.
Okay.
And then I'm looking for individuals in a country that have, for whatever reason, they have the means to put something together.
Sure.
An event, right? Kind of put me up when I'm there.
Yep.
And so that I can start speaking to, again, get around. It may be in the post-disclosure world. It's an opportunity to reach people, also to raise some funds for PRG, again, nonprofit. So I'm going to be putting out there.
Okay.
Last time I did it, 20 countries. No, not 20 countries, 18 lectures in something like 13 countries. The power of social media. So I think I'm about to do that again. And so because you're in the UK, I want to come speak there. I'd like to maybe speak at 4 or 5 different places, because I've spoken in Liverpool, I've spoken in London, I've spoken in, what's that other city? A couple other cities, at least 4 cities in the UK. Like to revisit all 4 of them. Okay, my friend, I'm going to let you go now and return to your life.
This is my life, Steve.
Okay, good.
My friend, thanks so much, Steve. I want to say something to you, which I know you American people say to your military, which is thank you for your service. This is your work is as I said to you last time we spoke. That when I first saw you it was on the screen when I was in Milan, and you were talking. I thought I like this guy. He's coming from a grounded place, like you just said. We can look at the stuff that's crazy, and we can say, okay, that's there, but keep feet on the ground. And thank you, my friend. I
appreciate that. When I'm on the Hill, I say it to the Hill security police. I say it to the security people in my National Press building. I say it to servicemen when I see them. So I'm honored they hear that. All right,
thank you. Cheers, Steve.
Until next time, my friend.
Until next time. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers, man.